All right, Health Science 20, talking about the nervous system today, part 1. Here we go. Health Science 20, the nervous system anatomy. All right, what's happening here? I'm going to just adjust this screen a little bit so we can make sure we get it correctly on the video. Come on now. Where are we? There we go. Let's take that over to about there. All right. So the nervous system is a collection of nerve cells throughout our bodies. It's composed of our brain, spinal cord, sensory organs, and all of the nerves that connect them. Central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, okay? Nerves, the ganglion, peripheral nervous system. So even the nerve endings in your skin and stuff, peripheral nervous system. Anything that's have nerve cells that senses things. The nervous system is responsible for the control of the body and the communication among its parts. So obviously bones give structure, muscles aid in movement as well, but it's the senses that causes it all to work together, right? It's kind of like the central, well, it's your brain is part of it, so it's the central kind of booking agency, right? It decides what moves and when and coordinates everything. So it's responsible for control of the body and communication among its parts. To do this, it's broken into two parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so there's the CNS, central nervous system, and PNS, peripheral. The central nervous system receives and processes information. It also initiates action. So it receives and processes information and initiates action. The two parts of the central nervous system are the brain and spinal cord. So you guys know about the brain a little bit. It's very, very complicated, lots of different moving parts. Or not moving parts so much, but lots of parts to the brain. And it all works together to coordinate everything that happens in your body. Some voluntary, some involuntary. The spinal cord goes down the back, right? Settles along your vertebrae there for that protection. And it sends out kind of the main signals to all of your appendages in your body. The brain, let's talk a little bit more about the brain. The brain is where all of the thought and regulation of everything in the body takes place. It's approximately 3 pounds and has 3 main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brain stem. The cerebrum, which is just the general name for the largest part of the brain there, the cerebellum, and the brain stem at the base. Yep. Yeah, you missed, you were out, you just got in. So you'll have to fill in the blanks a little bit later.
That's unit 5.
All right, everybody's got the right set of notes now. Beauty. All right, that's the brain. What about let's talk about the cerebrum. The cerebrum makes up 80% of the brain. It's where everything that we think of as thought takes place, or at least active, or at least what's active during that. What? The teal part of the picture. So this teal part of the picture right here.
What's the teal?
Okay. So it's what's teal is a color. So it's this kind of mint green, but teal is a color. So it's this part of the brain. This is the part that's active during thought. That's what they're trying to say here. Yeah. I don't think you'll need to know, do you have spaces, blanks that you have to fill in? Okay, so no, you just have general. So you don't need to know, you won't need to memorize these just yet, just to know the general parts. Temporal lobe, if I can even read that. Let me zoom in for you. Inferomedial margin, frontal lobe, superior margin, medial surface, corpus callosum, occipital lobe. No, you don't need to memorize those.
Sounds good.
So there's lots of different parts. The brain's very complex, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the cerebrum. Questions? All right. It's divided into 2 halves called hemispheres. These 2 halves of the brain communicate with each other through a narrow band in the middle called the corpus callosum. Okay, there's a communication there. Now, I'm not a doctor. I haven't studied this stuff a lot, but you know, when we talk about, and maybe it'll come up here in the notes or in the discussion, but the left-brained and right-brained. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah.
I mean, I've mentioned that. I think the lots of the logic, have you think logically, is sort of in the left brain, left brain logic. Right brain is where lots of your feelings and what your relational skills and all that. So if you are a right brain person, you are very creative and you have lots of sensitivity to relationship things and you're that kind of thing. If you're left brain, a little bit more left brain, your logic, your kind of process, one step after the other. Everything's methodical. It's a little bit more less relational, but a little bit more mathematical, surgical sort of thing. So again, that's the communication between the two. Obviously, you should use both sides of your brains, but it just so happens that personalities tend to, fall into general camps where one's more than the other. And also, again, I believe just from my own experience, and you guys can maybe help me. Some of you have more experience with this, but what's the word I'm looking for here? When there is trouble with the halves communicating with each other, like seizures, epilepsy, I think that has something to do with the connection between the brains there. There's something that's malfunctioning. Just off the top of my head, but maybe we'll come across that. Okay, next slide, boys. Pay attention to the back there. The cerebrum is also divided into 4 lobes. Through studying brain injuries and MRI scans, we have found that the 4 lobes are active during different categories of things. So, the frontal lobe, this is where higher thought happens. The more complicated thought process comes from the frontal lobe. Planning, expression, and reasoning. Okay, that's what the frontal lobe is. So your higher levels of thought, your expression of what you're thinking and expression, and your reasoning, how you sort of weigh the validity of different options and how you reason through a problem is your frontal lobe. The parietal lobe is this second one near the top. That's your motor functions. So moving your arms and legs, motor functions. There are fine motor functions too, like your fingers. This would be fine motor. This moving would be gross motor. It's called. So your motor functions and orientation and recognition. So where you perceive stimulus from your outside, how you orient yourself in space and that kind of thing, where you recognize faces and recognize things. So frontal lobe, parietal lobe. The temporal lobe is this one kind of on this near the bottom here. Sounds, are processed in the temporal lobe. Memory, speech processing. Typically the left side is spoken, right side is rhythmic and tone. Okay? So again, that language, the spoken language, more associated with the left side. Rhythm, music, tone, that kind of thing on the right side. So we got frontal. Boys, do you have a question or are you guys just chatting? Okay, keep the side conversations down unless you have a question, please. Okay, I don't want to be talking over you guys. Frontal, parietal, temporal. If you have a question, please let me know. Or if you have a comment or something that you know or something you want to add to the discussion, just go ahead. Bring it to the class. But if it's not something that contributes here, then just keep it quiet for now. The occipital lobe. Okay, so this is where sight is processed. Your sight. Kind of interesting. Your eyes are at the front. Your occipital lobe in the back is where it processes sight. Huh, interesting. So that's largely your sight part of your brain. All right, the cerebellum. Yeah, eyes on the back of your head. Maybe that's where that came from. Cerebellum is responsible for coordinating movement. So this is kind of the lower back part of your brain. So that's movement. Now, coordinating movement, right? We did see in one of those other lobes the movement, right? Motor functions, okay, orientation and recognition, parietal lobe. Again, that's not largely responsible for coordinating the movement. So maybe decisions on when and how to move, right? If you're catching a ball, right? Part of your brain moves your arm. Other part of your brain decides, as you perceive information, when to lift your arm and when to catch the ball. Like that kind of thing, right? So it's a coordinated effort. All right, and the brainstem is responsible for transferring information from the brain to the body, okay? So everything, your thought and your decisions and all that come up from here, and then it gets sent through the brainstem. So transferring information. It also regulates autonomic things like the body breathing and beating and heart beating, etc. So it regulates all those involuntary functions of your organs and different things. Again, you don't have to memorize all this stuff here right now. I think probably just the larger scale sections will be ones you want to memorize. But there's all sorts of different parts that are responsible for different things that you'll learn maybe later. Okay, let's move on from the brain to the spinal cord. It extends from the brainstem down inside of the vertebrate. It transfers signals from the brain to the body. It also can do basic stimulus response through reflexes. Okay, so it transfers signals from your brain to your body. It's kind of like the main trunk of the tree. If you think about a trunk of a tree, right? The main trunk, and then it's sent to all the branches of the body. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about all this stuff here. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. All right. Okay, what is the reflex arc? The reflex arc takes the signal to the spine. The spine then sends a signal to the brain. So if we're talking about sensory going to the brain, it also needs to, the brain needs to process the information coming in from the outside world too. Your brain can't experience directly, because it's hidden inside your skull, things that are happening around you, like the smells and the sights and the feelings, the pressure, the temperature, all that sort of stuff. So those stimuli have to be taken into the body and up into the brain so your brain can deal with them. So the reflex arc takes a signal to the spine. The spine then sends a signal to the brain to register the stimuli, but it also sends a signal to the body to move even before the brain processes the signal. Cool. All right. So you have a, so sometimes the reflex arc, so if you, if you touch something hot, like in this diagram, your brain, before your brain even understands fully sort of what's happening, there is there's an actual, a kind of a fast track of sensory to your brain and back. Before the brain even processes it, it's a reflex, right? So if, someone scares you, you have a reflex, right? Or if you put your hand on something hot, boom, you lift up before your brain even realizes, hey, that's burning me, right? Can you imagine if you're hitting something hot, it's like your brain says, hey, I think you're touching something hot. Oh, really? Let's see. Yeah, I see smoke. Oh, oof, that's too bad. My flesh is burnt. Too much time. So praise the Lord, we have reflexes. I wonder where those come from. Okay, so that's the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, okay, is...
Do you need to memorize them?
Do you need to memorize them? What do you mean? The central and the peripheral? You would need to memorize the difference between the two, yeah.
Do you need to
So brainstem, the brain and spinal cord would be your central.
Yeah.
The peripheral would be, we're going to talk about it now. So the peripheral nervous system transmits signals between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. It's composed of motor neurons and sensory neurons. So peripheral, the word peripheral, you've probably heard of that before, but it's kind of like the surrounding outer things. So the periphery in your vision is the thing that you can see on the side, right? So you're looking directly ahead. I can see my hands moving even though I'm not looking directly at my hands, right? So your periphery, oftentimes it's like the perimeter, it's like the outside of, right? The edges of. So it's the far reaches of, you can think of it that way. The periphery for your sight would be the far reaches of your sight when we get kind of off axis there. Motor skills would be moving, sensory, neurons, sensory would be receiving signals, right? If you get your hand slapped, you get that stimulus and that goes to your brain. You feel that, hey, that hurts. Let's get out of the way of that next time. Somatic and autonomic nervous system in the PNS. There are two roles for motor neurons. Somatic, that's voluntary movement, and autonomic, not automatic, but it's autonomic, it's close, involuntary movement neurons. Okay, so two roles, voluntary and involuntary. Okay, the autonomic, that's kind of like automatic, right? So that's how you can remember that's involuntary. So external environment, somatic nervous system, sensory neurons, motor neurons for the external stuff, your autonomic nervous system, your internal environment like your organs and stuff primarily is involved there. So your brain tells your heart to beat while you're sleeping. Awesome. Your diaphragm to contract and expand so your lungs can take in air. That's awesome. That's awesome. That happens while we sleep. Oh, this helps a lot. Okay, so we've got a big picture right in the middle of this part here. What? two brain cells? Boy, I'd be offended if I was that guy. There's a picture of this guy. 2 brain cells is the title. Not very smart, are you? I think that would be 2 kinds of brain cells, I guess. The entire nervous system is made up of 2 types of cells, I'm assuming. You have, which blanks do you have? The entire nervous system is made up of 2 types of cells, neurons and neuroglia. Probably not pronouncing that word properly. Neuroglia. Neuroglia, neuroglia, neuroglia. What do you guys think? Neuroglia? Neuroglia, neuroglia. Neuroglia. All right, neuroglia. Okay. So I don't know if you guys like. I think we do have kind of better diagrams on these slides. So I'll go back to these slides, but we might have to pop back to the other ones. So neuroglia and neurons. Okay. So neurons have 3 main parts. That would be the next slide here. Dendrites. That's receivers. Okay. So your neurons. These are the receiving of the stimulus, the pressure, or temperature, whatever. The cell body, that's the processors, and the axon would be the transmitter. So you have the receiver, the processor, and the transmitter. Okay? If you get your hand slapped, okay, the dendrite takes in that stimulus, your cell body processes it, and then it transmits a signal there. It's like, hey, I just got smacked. That hurts. Okay, so your brain takes notice, like, hey, what do I have to change? Do I have to move out of the way? Do I need to not punch my sister? What is it? All right, signals. Neuron signals are binary in nature. They are either on or off. On or off. If the body wants the brain to pay more attention to the signal, it sends it repeatedly, kind of like flickering on and off a light switch. Hey, boys. Yeah, spaces. Fill them in. So neurons are either on or off. They're binary in nature. The signals are yes or no, or on or off.
There's 1 and a 0.
Kind of like a 1 or 0, yeah. Binary code would be 1s or 0s. 4 functions. Neurons are specialized cells that make up our nerves. They can do 4 things. Okay? What 4 things do you think they can do? Yeah, sense. I heard someone say sense. Receive information from other neurons or sensory organs. So think about your inner ear. It's receiving information as sound waves come in and hits your eardrum or your tympanic membrane here. Do you guys remember the parts of the inner ear?
Yes.
Remember those ones? Malleus, incus, and stapes. Yes, the bones of the middle ear. Malleus, incus, and stapes. So neurons can take information from other sensory organs. Okay, here's your eye too. Physical Science 20 next year, when you guys take that, you'll learn a lot about the eye. You learn all these parts, and your inner ear as well. You'll study this a little bit more in depth, and you'll have to memorize some more terms next year. But the eye and the ear, amazing organs. And one of the earliest and most complicated to form too when a person is created, conceived. It's the eye and the ear that formed first. Which is actually interesting too. In the Bible, the Lord says, I am the one who created the seeing eye and the hearing ear. And I read that just the other day. I thought, that is amazing, because here's God. Someone wrote this down thousands of years ago, And when we today find out that the eye and the ear are some of the most complicated, I have no idea how they're created, how they work. They're just unbelievable. And you see in the depths of Scripture, God says, hey, by the way, when you're ready for this, it's me that made the seeing eye and the hearing ear. I thought, wow, that's cool, right? Like it was God that made the hair follicle. Like, okay, squirt. There's a whole bunch of hair follicles all over your body. But like the seeing eye and the hearing ear, wow, those are the top two right there. Amazing. Cool. All right, number 2, it processes that information. Neurons take it in, they receive it, and they process the information. Some weird diagrams there. Number 3, conduct the signal to the synapse with another neuron. Okay, so the synapse is kind of like the space in between. It's sort of like the the gap in between, and a signal can like pass through or jump across that. So it conducts a signal to send through these synapses to another neuron, so that signal can be passed along and along and along all the way up to the brain. Yeah. And 4th, communicate with other cells, including other neurons. So again, here's the synapse in between 2 neurons, and signals can be passed along quite quickly. I'm going to blow this up a little bit here. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to get into this. Maybe Bio 20. If any of you go into the medical field, you'll be sitting at a beautiful library, probably with a real nice view somewhere, and you'll be surrounded by books and diagrams like this, and you will be spending hours a day studying this diagram and understanding how this works, and you'll be in awe, and you'll be amazed, and you'll be able to help people that are sick or dying or have disease. Maybe you'll find a cure for something really terrible. And anyways, this is just a sort of a rudimentary diagram to help explain sort of what happens here. And I haven't really spent much time looking at this either. But this would be sort of like, I believe this is the synapse, right? So this is kind of what happens in between. Yeah, it's amazing. The deeper you go, the more complexity you see, and it's really awe-inspiring, I would say. Our bodies are pretty awesome. Okay, the neuroglia, or the glia cells. The neuroglia, usually called glial cells, clean up brain debris. Wow. Clean up brain debris, okay? Your brain garbage. Huh. I'll refrain from commenting on how your neuroglia is working today. What? I was just saying it's not working at all because you guys are so efficient. So neuroglia, usually called glial cells, clean up brain debris, transmit nutrients, nice, hold the neurons in place, beauty, digest parts of dead neurons, gross, and regulate the content of the extracellular space. Wow, so awesome. Like, you can barely see this stuff in a microscope, and look at all the jobs it has and how it works. That is amazing. It cleans up brain debris. You guys know that your cells are working and they're taking in nutrients and expelling debris, right? We talked about that. There's a system, the lymphatic, I think, to clean that out, right? Kidneys and all that sort of stuff, extra stuff. Your brain debris, interesting. I don't really know much about brain debris, but I guess maybe that would be brain farts. Would that be? If you have that's a common statement, right? Oh, sorry, it's not a brain fart there. Maybe that's brain debris. Maybe that's what they're talking about. The stinky substance. Okay. Regulate content of the extracellular space. Nice. I don't know what extracellular space. Extracellular would be outside of the cell, so the space outside the cell. It sounds like the introduction to a sci-fi movie, really. The neuroglia, usually called glial cells, clean up brain debris, transmit nutrients, hold the neurons in place, digest parts of dead neurons, and regulate the content of extracellular space. Without the glial cells, the neurons would quickly quit working. Ouch. There are anywhere from 10 to 50 times more glial cells in the nervous system than neurons. Wow. So this is like the garbage collectors and all the little extra bits that you think of. Also interesting, and again, this is a little aside, but scientists have actually made great grounds. They have discovered how these cells work by coming at this not from the mindset that this is all an accident, but from the mindset that this is created and designed. Because they see so much design in our body and in our cells. And scientists have actually discovered more functions in our cells and different body parts that we didn't think were there. Because most scientists, you guys probably understand, most scientists believe that all this stuff came about by accident over billions of years. But if this is actually designed, then there would be some functions that we have yet to discover that might be beyond our own comprehension. And there's been studies, and I've read things about this. It's like when scientists actually look at things they don't understand, and they think, okay, let's assume that whoever designed this was way smarter than us, and there's some functions that need to be addressed or worked out. So how can we step back and assume that this is a intelligently designed system? And then let's think about it like from an engineering perspective. And it's like, wow, they see how this works together, and they thought this was vestigial, they thought this was garbage stuff, they didn't think this worked. And now they're seeing that, hey, all this actually works together to address a function that is such a high function that we didn't know how the cell did this. But so I think as a Christian, that's pretty amazing, that if you actually look at this from a perspective that God designed this, then you can see the design and the intelligence in here. And actually, that spurs on science like you wouldn't believe. And there have been a lot of discoveries made when that sort of mindset has been the basis of exploration. So I thought that was pretty cool. Right? I mean, these glial cells, right? They do all of the behind-the-scenes kind of work that needs to be done, but nobody else wants to do them, right? Because there's no glory in this, right? It's kind of like the maintenance crew that works at night only, you know, in the big store or whatever. All right, let's keep going. The cells within the nervous system are found all throughout the human body, but by far the greatest concentration of neurons and glial cells is within the brain. So they're all over the nervous system, but the largest concentration in the brain. This is an electron microscope image of a glial cell in the brain. Kind of cool, hey?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. I'm glad you agree. All right, that's 9.1. Anatomy and function. 9.2. Disorders and diseases. Do you have this next in your handout there? All right, your nervous system spread throughout the entire body, contains many organs, brain, spinal cord, eyes, tongue, nose, sensors within the skin, etc. As a result of its spread out nature, there are many ways that it can malfunction. So think about all of the sensory organs, all of the information that can be taken into your body and sent to your brain, to and from. A lot of things are involved, like the eyes, tongue, and nose, which you didn't mention before, but obviously those sense things as well. Trauma, infections, degeneration, that's just losing function over time. Structural defects, things are not made properly, they aren't put together properly, sometimes in the womb, or sometimes things get, there's trauma or injury later, but a lot of the structural defects comes from maybe the fact that the developing person doesn't get put together quite right. It's quite an intricate process that the DNA outlines. Tumors, which are cancerous growths, blood flow disruption. We will look at an example of each of these. Everybody got those words down? Beauty. Okay, concussions. Anyone here had a concussion? Okay, the accident prone among you.
Is it very surprising?
Yes, okay, concussions. Yeah, if you're involved in sports or just generally unlucky, I guess. Lots of injuries you have. But yeah, lots of times in sports, I'm okay. So football, big, that's a common sport where concussions can occur. Lots of head-on collisions, but other contact sports as well.
Falling off a swing.
Or falling off a swing, right? Yes, one of the most popular contact sports in the world. Yes, swinging. Okay, a common example is a concussion for a head injury. Your brain has the consistency of about a firm jello substance. So your brain is not solid, it's not liquid, it's a firm jello. It's protected by a fluid cushion. So your brain, fluid cushion. Hey, guys, pay attention here, please. The fluid cushion. If your head is hit or shaken too hard, enough of the brain can impact or brush the inside of the skull. This can cause bruising or bleeding internally on the brain. So your brain is kind of suspended within this liquid sort of sac, really. And if you get hit in the head too much, the brain inside there, actually, there's not enough cushion and it can bump into your skull. And believe it or not, your brain is pretty delicate. You have some of the strongest bone structure in your body surrounding it. You have this extra fluid sac. I mean, you think about your brain and your heart and your spinal cord. Those are like probably the three really most important things in your whole body. Your brain has these bones that are fused together in that circular sort of arch pattern, right, that make it very impenetrable, very strong. Your heart is surrounded by this thick cage of bone, right? And your spinal cord has all of these special bones that move just right and just enough. If there was only 2 of those bones in your back and it went like this, your spinal cord would get crushed bending over. But if there's a whole bunch of them, each one only has to move just a tiny bit and your cord is protected in there. Amazing how we are designed to protect these important organs. Another one, meningitis. Have you ever heard of this term before, meningitis?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bad infection. Can afflict young people especially as well. This is when the membranes surrounding the brain, the meninges, become infected. So it's a brain infection, but it's more the membrane of the brain infection. It's diagnosed with a spinal tap. So if you have some kind of infection surrounding your brain, a spinal tap is basically a big needle that gets stuck into your spinal, near your spinal cord there, and they can take a sample of the fluid, and so there would be traces of this infection. And meningitis has been known to kill young people, like teenagers and stuff. It's a big thing, and it's very, very fast acting. Like if you have meningitis, you contract a meningitis. Lots of times because young people are generally so healthy, they're just sick. You guys are sick for a few days, right? You miss a few days of school, some of you, and because you're sick, no big deal. Your body gets over it. You come back. Sometimes, this infection, if it's in the wrong spot, can be fatal, and it can act very, very quickly. So obviously inside your the meninges here is lots of different layers. We won't get into those too much, but meningitis, a membrane and the brain infection. Yeah, question. Sorry, how do you get it? I don't know. By disobeying your teacher, I think, is the one way it comes.
He has it.
Yeah, all of you might have it. You guys should no. No, I that's a good question. I don't really know how it's contracted or where it originally comes from. I don't know. It's an infection, but it's deep inside your skull, so it's tough to trace. You can look that one up sometime later. Okay, look that up a little bit later. And again, guys, listen, if there's anything that you're curious about that I don't know or I don't address in the lesson, put a little star beside it. And you all know about the World Wide Web. Do you know about that? There's this, I think it's a passing fad. However, the whole world, there's a lot of information you can access through a computer. Yeah, do you guys know about this thing? www. Do you know that stands for World Wide Web? That's what they used to call it when it first came out. Yeah. So you can look up this stuff, and there's lots of places where you can find information. If you don't know about the World Wide Web, I do have a set of encyclopedias at the back. Right now they're just holding down my shelf, but you can actually pull them out, open them up, and there's words inside there. Yeah. Yeah. And you can look up meningitis. It'll be in there.
No, I don't believe you.
No, I'm serious.
No, I don't.
It's the truth. Yeah. I have a whole set there, and I have, okay, get this, because I'm a math teacher primarily, I have a whole bunch of M's from different sets of encyclopedia. So if you want to look up math, yeah. If you don't know about the World Wide Web, okay, anyways, I digress. All right, let's continue on. Alzheimer's. Okay, Alzheimer's. we've probably all heard of Alzheimer's disease. It's a form of dementia. Brain cells gradually fail for some unknown reason, and as a result, memories, skills, and speech worsen. Personality may also change. Okay? So, Alzheimer's disease is a degradation of brain cells. They lose their function, and unfortunately, it's very tragic. If you start to lose function of your arm, okay, that's one thing, you can deal with that. Maybe your arm doesn't work so well. If you start to lose function of key components of your brain, that affects memory's the big thing, but motor skills, your speech, and many people have experience with perhaps your grandparents or whatever getting dementia or Alzheimer's disease, and it can be a very disappointing, very tragic thing for the family and for people. Yeah. So I would say too that it's important to note that a lot of function and some of personality is definitely attached to brain function. I'm a bit of a dualist though. I don't think that all of your personality, all of your loves, all of your passions, your spiritual connection, I don't think that is attached to your brain directly all the time. So I'm a bit of a dualist in the sense that there's your brain and then there's your mind, there's your personality, and there's your function. So obviously there's some connections, but as I mentioned the other day in our family life day, I was talking about the mental health there, and you know, my connection to my family, to my wife, to my kids, the fact that I love them so deeply, cannot be connected to any cell or any chemical that's inside this noggin right here. It's something outside of that. So that is, again, I believe endowed by our Creator that we have a personality like that we have extra metaphysical connections. But a lot of function and personality is expressed by degradation of brain cells, and Alzheimer's certainly contributes to that. All right, spina bifida. You may have heard of this one. Typically birth defects. A possible birth defect is spina bifida. This is when the spinal cord herniates out of the back, and it's exposed, and this exposes it to amniotic fluid. So amniotic fluid is the fluid that is inside the womb as a developing baby. That's the fluid that surrounds the baby as it develops, amniotic fluid. This can cause mental problems and paralysis. So unfortunately, if something doesn't quite get put together quite right, the spinal cord actually can protrude from the developing baby. And I guess that's a snapshot of it. I don't know. I've never seen it in real life, but it can affect brain function and body function and development and all sorts of things. I know some people that have spina bifida, but yeah, it's typically before birth this starts to go a little bit wrong. All right, that's the bell. We'll pick this up tomorrow for part 2. See you later.
Wow, Mr. Maxwell?
Yeah.
Why would the